This is Will McPhail. So the eye bag situation is getting out of hand, but my body hasn't caught up that the dissertation is over and that I can sleep now and actually rest. Plus, you know, there are a lot of like post-dis stuff that I had been sort of postponing that I need to catch up on. So my brain's like working on those all the time. So that's why I look a bit exhausted. So today I bring you another catch up, wrap up. This one is dedicated to graphic novels. I've been reading so many graphic narratives lately. This is a really mixed bag. Let's start with something that I actually mentioned about like 2 or 3 years ago in the channel, and this is The Times I Knew I Was Gay by Eleanor. I remember I mentioned it in my mid-year freakout tag. I didn't manage to do one this year, of course. In one of those, I had just found out that this was coming out, and I was like, I usually don't wait for new releases. However, there is this one book and I really wanted to read it because it's the tale of Eleanor coming out as a lesbian, and also it examines her experience of going back and forth and sort of saying it to her friends, but also not really acting on it at first and going back to dating guys. And then the last date she had with a guy, she was thinking the whole time that, oh, I know now I'm gay. So it's just like a really interesting look at coming to terms with one's sexuality and knowing from a very young age, but also not having the tools to properly process it and how that works. So it's really nice. I really like the style. It's a really like open, friendly, easy to access style. It's very general audience. This is the type of book that you should definitely have in schools. This has no sexual content whatsoever. It's very interesting also as a choice because this is marketed as YA. I like it. I mean, there is a problem sometimes with women loving women, right? Not being able to express their desire for other women, but I think it suits the tone of the novel, and I like that it's very accessible, that anyone can read it. Eleanor in the foreword says, this is the type of book that I wish I had as a tween, and that is so important. So I really recommend it. Again, it's like a very simple, chill read, but I think it's very effective. And although it doesn't do that thing that I love about top-notch memoirs in general, where it sort of brings it out of the personal experience into broader cultural observations, this is not that. It's really cute, it's really family friendly, and it's just also a really interesting look into the uncertainty of coming to terms with one's sexuality and how you go about telling other people, especially people that have known you for your entire life, and then also starting to date women. And yeah, it's just really cute and honest and vulnerable, and I love the style, so I really recommend that one. One that sadly wasn't as successful, and I don't think I'm gonna keep because I have to be very ruthless. It's Banned Book Club by Kim Hyun-suk, HyungJu, and Ryan Estrada. And I think this was translated, but maybe not. Maybe it was published originally in English. Yeah, actually. Basically, this is graphic non-fiction book, or like slightly fictionalized time of the author being part of this banned book club in the middle of the Korean dictatorship. I was super excited to read it. Last year or 2 years ago, I read Human Acts by Kang, and that book, first of all, is amazing, but also it covers a bit of the same period. So I was actually really excited to check this out. The problem is that although the style is great, it feels so rushed, and like all these things just sort of happen. It's like, okay, we have to talk about them. There's no real reflection on anything, and it's a shame because it's like such an important topic. You have a lot of things. You have the fact of why are you reading like foreign books? What is the power of books? How censorship affects the character of the people. It went by way too quickly, and there wasn't any character development. The most interesting aspect, I think, was the idea of surveillance and like mutual surveillance, and how trust is very complicated when you are in this situation. So I did enjoy that. It rings very true. That's the thing. It feels that it's so short, it didn't have space to develop what needed to be developed, basically. I might keep this, reread it, and see if I feel the same way, knowing more of what this is. And if I do feel the same way, then I will unhaul it. But maybe I need to read it once and then know for sure. A similar dilemma I face with The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott by Zoe Thorogood. And this is a beautiful, beautiful graphic novel. Like, look at it. Look at this art. Oh my god, the color palette, the way it's used, because it's about an artist. It has some of the artist's art. Let me show you. Isn't it gorgeous? It's just, Zoe Thorogood is like such a talented artist. However, I'll tell you the plot. So this is about a typical millennial depressed artist whose only source of happiness is the fact that she got admitted to present in this very prestigious exhibition. And so she's preparing 10 canvases, but she's having trouble finding a subject. She gets attacked one night and she receives a blow to the head and she starts becoming blind. She falls into a deep depression, but then she decides, okay, screw it. I am going to try and complete the 10 portraits and present in this exhibition, even if I can't see the results after. And she embarks on this quest. So far, so good. The problem is that it engages with homelessness in a way that is very surface level, very irresponsible, almost romanticizing it. And it just feels very, very uncomfortable, especially because there is this epilogue where it's basically, oh, well, but if you work hard enough, eventually these things will be fine. You only need like a little bit of luck and hard work. And it's like, So yeah, this is one that I don't know if I'm going to keep because I love the art style and I might want to, you know, check it out, reference it. But at the same time, I felt really gross reading some of these things. I was like, no critical thought whatsoever was put into that aspect of it. Blindness aspect and the artistic aspect and the power of art aspect. Actually, there's like a lovely, lovely section where the main character is giving like sort of commencement speech or something like that, and she talks about the power of art, and it's like amazing, this is great. Oh, and there's also like a queer element, which is great, but the class aspect is just very poorly handled. And so I don't know if I'm keeping it. Then one that I'm definitely not keeping is Wine, A Graphic History by Benoist or Benoist, Simmar and Daniel Casanave. Is this originally? No, this was not originally in English. It's translated by Edward Govan, and the colorists are Patrice Larsenet, Amélie Lefebvre, Christian Leroux, and Robin Millet. I assume this was, yeah, this is originally in French, so I apologize for that butchering. So this is what it says on the tin. It's graphic nonfiction, and I do love the caricature-esque art style. I love classic caricature style. However, my problem with this is that I felt it made absolutely no difference that this was told as a graphic novel. The comments that the people make are rarely relevant or rarely do anything other than try to do like an unfunny joke. It's just very disappointing because I love graphic nonfiction and I think it has so much potential. But to me, if the graphic element of a graphic novel is just no more than reading an illustrated encyclopedia, then that makes no sense. I did like that they used Bacchus as sort of your guide into the wine world. I thought that was cool. Nevertheless, I don't want to reread it. It was a chore to get through regardless of the illustrations. And it's just a bummer because I love learning through graphic novels, but this one just felt like a miss for me. I have Snapshots of a Girl by Beldan Sezen, and this was translated by someone. Oh, I remember. This is translated from Italian, and I had to struggle for hours trying to find the translator, and I don't remember if I found them. If I did, I will put it in the description down below as always. Oh my god, is this crooked? Has this always been crooked? Sorry. This is also a graphic memoir, and actually why I read this one at the same time as this one is because I wrote on lesbian graphic memoirs for my queer writing course. But this has a completely different style. It's much more zine-like, it's much more experimental. It's Beldan Sezen coming to terms with her identity not only as a lesbian, but also as a butch lesbian, and her relationship with femininity and masculinity. I love the art style, but I think it's a bit like take it or leave it for some people, because it is like messy and awkward at times and not polished, but in the best way. It feels very raw in a way that is simultaneously very intentional and, in my opinion, very effective. So I would recommend it if you like that sort of style and you're just curious about that first encounter with queer communities and understanding your queerness. And it's a little bit not surrealist, but it's just not a realist narrative in the sense that it's more like a diary, a sketch, very much a zine. I just really like it. This is the part where she comes out to her dad, and it's one of my favorite panels. I had to take scans with my phone and then cut them and do a whole thing. So I'm very familiar with these pages. I really liked it, really recommend it. Ongoing with the lesbian coming out theme, this is a fiction graphic novel called When I Came Out by Mette Kærulf Lorentzen, and this was translated by Charlotte Barslund. And I love the style of this. Look at it. Look at it. Look at the color palette, which color here is used so intentionally, and the layout and the narrative pace. Kærulf Lorentzen manages to so accurately depict mental states. And what's also great is that, okay, I'll tell you that I'm sorry that I keep giving you my opinions before summarizing the book, which is how reviews should go. Instead, I'm here just being a mess. So, this is about a woman who, when she is around 40, realizes she might be a lesbian while she's still married to a guy and has kids as well. So it's her journey towards coming out. It's very interesting because, like the cruise book, there are two stages, largely speaking, or three even. Like, one is coming to terms with it yourself, then coming out, and then sort of approaching these communities and understanding, oh, how do I meet people now? It's just so fascinating. And again, it's told in this really effective style. I like that each chapter starts with an object, and that is super relevant. What I also like is that the woman is taking care of her mother, with whom she's always had like a tense relationship, and her mother is suffering from dementia now. It's just a great book. Although there is a lot of anxiety and she's a very anxious person, it's ultimately such an uplifting book. And out of all the books that I've mentioned, this is the one I would recommend to the most people. I just think it's a very fun, very well paced, very engaging slice of life narrative about sexuality, and also has a protagonist that is not old but a little older, like a proper adult, quote unquote, not like a millennial in their 20s or 30s. So I also think that's very interesting. Then I read the Batman comic book by Frank Miller and David Mazzuchelli with Richmond Lewis. I've always dug Frank Miller's work. I'm not an expert in anything, but like his name on stuff for me is a seal of like, oh, I'm gonna be interested in this. But David Mazzuchelli, I didn't know, right? I think I mentioned this. I talked about this in my Cork book haul because I bought this on my flight to Cork. I'm gonna link that video down below and in the eye. But basically, this is a revamping or retelling of the Batman origin story. And I love rebootings of universes or retellings of origin stories, because often what they do is flesh out a character that has become so solidified in popular culture, and then they give it a little more depth or connect it more to the current cultural moment. And although it's been years, this is like an anniversary edition even, but I think you see so much of what's going on, and it's starting to turn again. It's starting to turn again towards campness and comedy, but before Guardians of the Galaxy, probably, this was where superheroes were headed, and now they're sort of competing, right? Anyways, it's just the grimness, the darkness, the muted palette. The people are fundamentally bad, but also maybe there are some good ones, and like, where can we find good moral guidance, basically, and who can we trust in that respect? Other than that, it's just like a really good time. So if you like Batman, this is a classic, you cannot miss it. Then I have In by Will McPhail or McPhail. This is one of the most gorgeous graphic novels I've ever read. It has this watercolor but black and white style, and then it has some instances. I won't explain why, but trust me, there is a reason, of full color. Well, that doesn't look like it's full color, but it really depends on the mood, but yeah, color. So basically what this is about is there's this guy who's borderline sociopathic, not in a violent way, but he just doesn't feel emotions. He feels like he cannot really connect, that every emotional connection is just performance, basically. One day he connects with someone. I think this has issues of pacing, and I think a lot of people won't like it because of who the protagonist is. I will go into that in a second, but overall I thought this was lovely. I loved the idea that connection can truly nurture us, and that connection is something that doesn't necessarily occur naturally, that takes effort, but not in a bad way, not like you have to work hard for this, just in a way where if you allow yourself to care and to have other people care about you, you will find it so rewarding. Now, a lot of people won't like the main character because he's kind of a drag. He's like a cis-het white guy who lives in Brooklyn, and the book is very like self-aware of that and cracks a couple of jokes because the guy basically goes from coffee shop to coffee shop trying to have like interesting conversations and never finding anyone to have them with. I think a lot of people won't make it to the point where the switch happens because they will be so done with this guy, who is, to be fair, pretty annoying, but I think it's worth it. I think the way it uses the graphic form to cultivate these relationships and to express these emotions and these affects is so freaking effective, and it's just beautiful. So I do recommend it. I also think the ending is fairly rushed. It's not a perfect graphic novel, but it is really, really good. And if you're interested in ideas of contemporary alienation and connection and vulnerability and sincerity, I think you will really, really enjoy this, and I recommend it. Oh, also shout out to the toppings in Edinburgh, because I saw this graphic novel last time I was in Edinburgh, and then the one time I actually got it was in this lovely bookshop in Nottingham called Page 45. It's a specialized graphic novel place, amazingly well stocked, and the owner is so friendly. We started chatting and it was great, and he suggested this one, and that's why I got it specifically at that time. Okay, and finally I have Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. This is a classic textbook on comic books and graphic narratives. It is just amazing. And when I mean that nonfiction can use the graphic form to enhance the learning experience, this is what I mean. The visual aspect is integral to the storytelling, and in this case, the content, the theory. It's just amazing. So it's organized into these sections. First, an introduction, which is also in graphic form, setting the record straight, the vocabulary of comics, blood in the gutter, time frames, living in line, show and tell, the 6 steps, a word about color, putting it all together, and it's just, it's so good. I learned so much. I'm definitely going to revisit this a bunch of times, regardless of whether you would actually want to draw comics. If you're interested in the graphic novel form and understanding it more and having a more profound engagement with it, you have to check it out. That was all. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do you read graphic novels? Why not? And do you have any recommendations based on what I like? I think I would like at some point, maybe for Nonfiction November, I would do like graphic nonfiction that I recommend, and also the one that I want to read, and also where to start with graphic nonfiction, because I think a lot of the same things get recommended over and over again. If I did that video, I would do like the classics of graphic narrative section, but I would also try to go a little more out there. So let me know if you'd be interested in that, and that's all for now. See you next time. Yeah, so and we let's try that again.